years ago. Abortion was still illegal in France. So that's a wrap-up for September. We've got lots of other stuff due in October, and we have at least 2 possible political evenings coming up in September, but we're not going to advertise those until they're a done deal. But anyway, watch the bulletin. So on that happy note, can I have my panel of willing volunteers? It looks like a bit like an FCC board meeting, actually, but I'm sure you'll forgive us. So what we're going to do is our panelists will very briefly introduce themselves and put them in their journalistic credentials in perspective, and then we'll look at a couple of pieces of film, and then we'll take it from there. So, Annalie Langerac, a long-time board member who, amazingly, this is your first panel appearance?
It is.
So why don't you just
I'd rather be the moderator.
quickly tell everybody who you are and what your background is.
I am a correspondent for the Dutch Telegraaf newspaper, public radio in the Netherlands, and correspondent of the Belgian public broadcaster, VRT. And is this okay? Yeah. I came to Thailand in 2006, in June 2006, 3 months before the military coup that year, which was a great timing for a journalist. For people who have been here longer or as long as me, you know that a lot has happened. And I've seen a few elections, 5 in total that I covered, 2 military coups.
As well. Only 2.
Yes.
Panu, past president.
Hi, I'm Panu Wongchaum. I'm a senior correspondent for Reuters, past president for here. I covered politics, I covered business in Thailand and mainland Southeast Asia. So I do cover politics quite extensively for this particular topic. And I have also a bit of a insider background, I guess, since many of my family members have been in various governments in the past 3 decades. So, cabinet members and so on.
After that shocking admission, we'll go to Jonathan Head. No, there's a reason, there's a logic to it.
Oh, okay.
Do as you're told.
You caught me by surprise. I'm Jonathan Head. I'm the BBC Southeast Asia correspondent, and I've been in that position so long that some people think I shouldn't be. But I first covered Thai politics. In fact, the first election that Thaksin Shinawatra was elected in very early 2001. I've been based in Indonesia, Singapore, Japan, and Turkey as well, but most of my time's been here. And this is my 3rd stint, but a very long one. It's now 11 years since I came back from Turkey to Thailand. So, I've seen many other things. I covered the 2006 coup, the 2004 tsunami, things like that. But this stint, of course, I've seen the entire unfolding of what led to this year's election. If you go right back to the Yingluck government, which I arrived back in the middle of in 2012. So it's been a very interesting journey with a huge number of twists and turns.
And so to May Wong.
Good evening. My name is May Wong, and I'm the bureau chief for CNA, as well as the senior Indochina correspondent for the channel. It's a Singapore television station. We have an office based here. Previously, I was based in Myanmar for 6 years, and now here in Thailand, looking at the region as well. And it's already been 6 years, actually, shockingly. Time flies. I've done mainly for Myanmar, for example, the Rohingya crisis when it first broke in 2017. So I actually went over to Rakhine, into the really northern part of the country, and saw with my own eyes and experience as to what was happening on the ground. And then now it's Thailand, another new adventure.
Great. So we'll go to our first piece of film. If you can roll it. And May Wong's provided this.
Before we roll it, I'll just give you a heads up on what exactly you're going to be seeing. Hang on a second. Can we pause for a minute? All right. So this was just very recent. Just in fact, a couple of days ago, this was the scene at the Port Thai headquarters on the day that Srettha was actually voted in as the Prime Minister. However, the scene was so chaotic and disturbing, the fact that it went viral because I had put up the video and it caught a lot of people's attention because not only was it so messy and disorganized, it was almost dangerous because a lot of people were getting crushed, and it was in a place that they could have managed because it was in their own party, and yet they didn't. So obviously the contrast was when they had the negotiations with the coalition party members, they had everything that was very organized and very well set up. But when it came to the media that day, they completely threw the plans out the window, and obviously a lot of people questioned why. So let's take a look at this video. Is there audio?
Should be a lot of noise.
He said no.
Nope. Okay. Sorry about that. Well, I will, yeah, you can kind of imagine what's going on right now, and there were a lot of screams. Can you please stop this? Mr. Bota, can you stop this? That was me saying it. That was one of the leaders of Bota. So he was stuck actually, he couldn't move at all. And you don't see behind the camera, but there's a whole bunch of other reporters and cameramen and all of that.
Crazy day.
Mr. Srettha, what kind of a prime minister do you want to be? Mr. Srettha, what kind of a prime minister do you want to be? A couple of words in English, please. Sir, Mr. Srettha, a couple of words. What kind of a prime minister do you want to be, please? A couple of words in English. Just in English. A couple of words in English then. A couple of words in English. What kind of a prime minister do you want to be?
People's Prime Minister.
What did he say?
People's Prime Minister. Because I asked him, what kind of a Prime Minister do you want to be? And this was just after he got that. And he said, People's Prime Minister. I tried to ask him, how do you intend to do that? He said, you had your couple of words. So that was the chaotic scene, as you can see right now. And if I can just wait for the next clip, I'll just show you a little bit before we cut off the video, before it goes on for too long. This was the scene also in Thai when they celebrated upon hearing the news that Srettha has won enough votes to be the next Prime Minister. Obviously, there were not just screams and shouts, but there were also tears of joy as some of the very staunch supporters broke down and they wept. And after that, they actually spilled onto the front of the party headquarters and they started dancing with all the traditional music and all of that. So if you want to stop it, we can, and then we can just move on.
Okay, that's fine. So from there, we'll go to a second piece of film that you'll find on YouTube, and it reprimands the foreign media for their behaviour and reporting of the latest election. So if we can run that, please, Tom.
Hello, fellow Thais and friends of Thais in other countries. Today, I would like to invite you to have observation with me about how international media choose to tell story about the Thai current political situation. Now, first, CNN headlines say Thai Parliament blocks election winners bid to become Prime Minister, while Reuters headlines say turmoils in Thailand as rival derail elections winners PM bid. On Twitter, Srettha Thavisin said, Thai democracy struggle for generation against the establishment, effort to crush the people's will. Now let's shift over to the non-Western and the non-US media. Al Jazeera said, Thai court suspends Pitha as MP as parliament votes on the new premier. And inside the content, Al Jazeera actually explained that the root of the court's decision came from Pitha himself. He knowingly unqualified to run in the May 14th election because he held shares in a media company. This is a violation of electoral rules. Members of parliament are banned under Thai law from owning stocks in media company. Him owning the media company stock meaning that he's disqualified. That's why the court suspended him. Now Nikkei simply tell the fact in the headline saying that Thai court suspends Pitha as lawmaker over media shares. What's interesting to me is that why would some media choose to do their jobs in telling fact, just fact, with no emotion attached, no ideology attached, while some other media punch headlines in a way to lead to understanding that democracy in Thailand is falling apart. Just because Pitha cannot be PM, this doesn't represent the fact that democracy in Thailand is falling apart. Why is the fact of him being a rule breaker not being bold in some news? Now for those who say past day outcome evidence the twisted of democracy in Thailand, or is an evidence of people's will and voices being crushed in Thailand? Now hear this. The election that we had just had at the beginning of this year is following a constitution written in 2017. Listen carefully. This constitution received referendum of 15.13 million of Thai. In other words, it is a constitution agreed by the people under the democratic scheme. Pitha is the man that many of the Thai people have voted for. Yes, it is an agreeable fact. But people's vote only goes so far as buying his way into being a PM candidate. In democracy in Thailand, people's vote doesn't mean that that person gets to be Prime Minister instantly. He has to go through further processes. From the point on that he being a PM candidate, Pitha and the Move Forward Party must show their ability to lead other parties into forming a joint government, which, to be fair, they put on a good fight and managed to form a coalition partners with 7 other parties. But they only went that far because last week parliamentary vote, it evidently showed that they did not succeed in forming a government. Pitha didn't win enough votes to be the PM. Now that being said, 7 days afterward, the second round of parliamentary vote has arrived. Parliament spent 7 hours of debates if it is rightfully valid to nominate Pitha as PM candidate for the parliamentary vote. Again, yes, we're talking about having the same group of people voting for the same guy who did not win last week. At the end result, members of parliament and senates voted in motion that Pitha could not stand for a second vote, as it is a redundancy with parliament's rejection last week. Now, it is true that the Move Forward Party has received 14 million of Thai votes, which landed them with the #1 position out of all the parties. But wouldn't you say it's a little bit overclaiming to say that their ideologies and standpoint represent the majority of Thai people, which is the exact word that they use all the time? Isn't it a little bit overclaiming to say that Pitha is the man, that Thai people hungry to be the Prime Minister? When if you look at the fact, we had total of 39 million active voters who came out and exercised their rights. Simply put, more than half of people, 64% to be exact, of voters didn't think that Pitha should be the next Prime Minister, or didn't agree with the way how Move Forward Party wanted to run the country. So to wrap things up, yes, Thai politics is a little bit messy right now, but fact should be delivered as fact by media. We are in the middle of social contradiction led by difference in belief and difference in ideology. So things are not easy as it is without any further pushes from the unnaturalized new headlines and the unnaturalized international media. Thank you. สวัสดีครับ
So we'll turn to the naturalized media representative, Panu, to explain, put that in context, explain who was speaking and where she comes from and what your connection is to her.
So we just heard from Nene Suwankiri, daughter of Trairong Suwankiri, who was a Thai minister back in the 1980s. And she's a deputy spokesperson for the United Thai Nation Party. She ran in the election. She didn't win a seat, but now she's spearheading their kind of international communication efforts, mostly through social media. And it is quite interesting. I mean, I went to school with her. That's your personal connection. She's much older than me, many years. But what is interesting is that I know some of the people in her team, and what they're trying to do is basically trying to reshape the conversation. I mean, to look at it fairly in terms of the political context, a lot of Thai, she has some point. There's some point to it. A lot of the narrative, especially for international audience, has been set by expert pundits or whatever that is not really from this faction. So what they're setting out to do is trying to set to frame the issue from their perspective. But of course, I mean, a lot of the stuff that she talks about our international media coverage and whatnot, clearly goes into the way that the stories are written, doesn't really goes beyond what she's trying to say, that highlighting that international media are biased and fake news and all that sort of stuff. But this is kind of the overall trend that we're seeing, not just in this election, but over the past 10 years, where international media has become a little bit of a punching bag by the Thai ultra-royalist conservatives. And in many ways, it's very convenient. Right, this conspiracy is not just about the media, it's also about foreign government interfering in Thailand, particularly the United States. And this narrative you see kind of floating around and built up by ultra-conservative media, bloggers, and so on. And now we have a political party that are carrying this similar message.
Right, and if you're going to look for a flaw in the argument, people didn't vote for the Prime Minister at the general election, they voted for the party that they wished to represent them, and then you work out how to do the coalitions from there. We have, sitting on the panel today, the ultimate punching bag.
Thank
you. Jonathan Head, who was running for his life at one point, with, what was it, 4 lèse-majestés charges against him? Three.
Investigations. They never charged me.
So the ultimate punching bag, and of course if you go back to 2010, we have the case of Dan Rivers of CNN, who was actually chased out of the country because he thought his kid was going to be murdered, and that is not an exaggeration. So it got seriously out of hand there. Looking back, because you have this very personal experience, Jonathan, looking back, do you feel this was actually a more liberal and calm election process than stuff that we've seen in the past?
Well, a lot of the steam has gone out of Thailand's political conflict, that's for sure. It's a much less polarized environment. We can have far more relaxed conversations with all sides. But there is, at the same time, and I think we're getting it in what you saw in that video, now an embedded mistrust on one side of the Thai political polity, the debate, in Western media. And it's been long coming. Most of the sort of conservative Thai elite 20, 30 years ago would have totally looked up to the Western media as the right kind of perspective on Thailand. And I think there is something of the sort of spurned lover's bitterness in this sense that the Western media doesn't report about Thai politics in a way they feel comfortable with. But I will, look, there were some valid points in there. When she pointed to people saying that Peter Lim Jaron or Move Forward won the election, when I write my stories for the BBC, I'm very careful with language. He didn't win the election. He got the largest share of seats. Now, you've got to contextualize the incredible swing towards Move Forward, which was a party that had been hammered by being dissolved back in 2020, had no resources. Many of its young candidates were totally inexperienced, running in areas with no back, going on bicycles in places. For them to win showed a tremendous swing in the Thai electorate towards their message and a loss of faith in the message of all the other parties. And we had to reflect that. Even if they didn't win, their achievement was astonishing. They expected to get maybe 40 to 60 seats. They got 151. It was a tremendous... We had to reflect that. What the problem with Nene's argument is, she focuses on simple facts like, Peter Lim Jaronrat violated the rule against owning media shares. On its own, that fact is meaningless to most outsiders. What you have to say is, it's an incredibly silly rule. I mean, parties can be dissolved in Thailand on the most absurd trivialities, and we know that's a design, it's put in there to be able to dissolve parties that pose a threat. The company that Peter had shares in, which he inherited from his father, had not been functional as a media company since 2007. There was a kind of weird move where it suddenly activated itself mysteriously just before the election. What she says is fine factually, but without context, it's meaningless. Our job as journalists always is to take on board this tremendous amount of detail that goes on in a political event like an election and try to make it meaningful for an audience that is not that interested in Thai politics. So there are inevitable simplifications. And I don't agree with all of the headlines, and I think some of her points are valid. But mostly, this idea that the Western media got it wrong because it didn't zero in on Peter's share ownership is just missing the point. One other point I wanted to make was that if I go back to the election that Thaksin won in 2001, the very first one I covered, watching the fall of Thaksin in 2006 from a messed up election which was boycotted by the opposition, I've seen, and right the way through, the turmoil of 2008 when we had airports occupied. I wasn't here for the dreadful violence of 2010, right outside this office. But then the movement that built up to overthrow the Yingluck government, and then those long years of military rule. The perspectives of journalists have changed, and the perspectives of Thai people have changed. When Thaksin won his election in 2001, people thought he was quite exciting. He was a new kind of leader. He was very brash, yes, but he was dynamic. He didn't want to listen to Western advice. He got the kind of coverage that a fresh, new kind of leader gets. A couple of years into his tenure, Western journalists, and I remember interviewing him and getting more or less thrown out of Government House, started to question his more authoritarian instincts. I was blacklisted from Government House. In an interview, he stormed out, yelling he wasn't a dictator. Then when he was ousted in the coup, people forget that in the 2006 coup, the Western media coverage was not particularly negative. There was a feeling then that Thailand had got itself boxed into this conflict. There was no resolution. Thaksin seemed to be a pretty intimidating figure. There were a lot of serious questions about him. And I think many people at that stage thought, and the Western media reflected this, well, coups are a kind of Thai tradition and it's a way out. And the coup leaders then were really keen to reassure us, this is going to be short term, it's just a device, we'll get it sorted out. And indeed, they handed back within 15 months. It was very different by the time 2013-14 came. That time, we started to see movements going out in the streets to challenge pro-Thaksin governments that clearly had very strong backing. These weren't protests. They were occupying government ministries. The police were being told in 2013 that they couldn't use force, that if they did, there'd be a coup. So they backed off and let these effectively insurgents take over government ministries. We as journalists had a duty to call out what we saw going on. This was a protest movement that was calling to overthrow a popularly elected government for all of its many flaws, and where it clearly had the kind of backing that the police couldn't even move against them. And of course that eventually led to the 2014 coup. Our reporting of that and our attempt to sort of say, look, actually what's going on here is it's not just a protest movement, this is an insurrection, really turned the people who believed they were doing the right thing and overthrowing a pro-Thaksin government against us. Most of the real hostility I've faced came from that time, the way that we reported it. Now, whether we got it right or wrong, there are a lot of things we didn't know that we know now. There are always subtleties that we miss. We do make mistakes. But it's a genuine attempt in all of these tumultuous events that happen to make them meaningful to audiences that don't have much of much time to read these stories. They're not going to stay on the story for very long. You've got to simplify them.
Jonathan, I'm going to just chop you there. Mei Wong, you cover for a regional organisation, so you have a completely different audience setup. One of the things about ASEAN is it's not in the least bit democratic. I'm not going to make any jokes about Singapore, so don't worry about that. But if you have a look around, there are no seriously functioning democracies, possibly Malaysia, which produced an interesting result, and what happened in the Philippines was flawed but interesting. But elsewhere, it's basically one-party systems. So when you're reporting something like that, what do you bring to the table? How do you present it to your audience, and what kind of ears are they listening with?
Thanks for a very difficult question.
My pleasure.
It is difficult, right? When Jonathan as well as Panu talked about this Western narrative that a lot of governments are trying to perhaps point fingers at, it's true. A lot of the undemocratic governments tend to do that. Myanmar, for example, as we've seen, right? Increasingly, every negative news about them, they point their fingers and say it's because the media, right, made it out to be like that. The media is spreading, misinformation or disinformation to paint a very different picture of what's really happening on the ground, and they're not really talking about the benefits that the military is bringing to the people. So that's one side of it. Obviously, governments are looking particularly at Asian media, and they are hoping that the Asian media would step up in a way to support them and be on their side. But as Jonathan was saying, it is our duty and our responsibility to call them out if necessary. And we do that factually. And for the channel, for CNA particularly, facts always, accuracies first before speed. Obviously, for a lot of the broadcast media, it's always about speed, because you need to get it out, you need to have breaking news to be the first one to put it out there. But for CNA, it's more importantly to focus on the facts of the matter, verify the sources first before we actually put the news out. So if we see something that's being flashed on Reuters, beg your pardon, we don't just go with it immediately. We would still check with what's happening on the ground, particularly if we have journalists, in specific countries. They would actually call up the journalists and say, is this true? Can you please verify that? Can you check, not just one source, but multiple sources to make sure that it's right before we put it out. And obviously the other point is, with some of the Western media, they tend to parachute journalists into the country because for certain issues, for certain events that are happening. And that's not good, simply because then those journalists have got absolutely no clue as to the cultural, the social dynamics within that country, and so they don't understand the nuances. And obviously, one example was that of the mass childcare shooting that happened previously in Thailand, where they parachuted, right, a CNN journalist, and she didn't know the cultural context behind that. She didn't know the kind of rules and regulations that you kind of need to abide by to a certain extent, and also to respect. And so she breached that, and then it caused an uproar, and obviously then the Western media got targeted, foreign media as a whole got targeted. So those are two, aspects of how perhaps the Asian media organizations tend to be a little bit more careful, to be honest with you, but we would never shy away from reporting what's the truth that's out there. And it really depends on us, because they would actually look at the Western media and say, all right, let's figure out what the Asian media are saying about the same story and see how they are covering it. Who are they talking to? So we do have a very conscious responsibility to make sure that we're not just speaking as well, for example, to experts and analysts. We're not actually approaching, without disrespect, but we're not approaching the Westerners. We try to get, as often as possible, the actual national, representatives. For example, if it's Thailand, we try to seek out Thai experts, Thai analysts, as opposed to going to a Western, analyst, which is a little bit more, convenient. So these are some of the things that we have to consider very, very carefully. And also then we have to, stand up and fight for, the truth in terms of telling them that this is how we are presenting it. This is because of the facts that we've gathered. And if you don't like it, then I'm sorry, you have to deal with that.
And Mei Wong, what is the interest in Thai election stories, for example, amongst your regional audience? Do you have any way of knowing?
Yeah, I mean, we do, simply because a lot of people would be commenting on social media in terms of watching the news on YouTube, for example. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook, right? So all the social media platforms are being used, and every time we get comments from them asking certain questions, and obviously it's all about economy, right? The businesses are very interested. For example, with the Thai government, who is the incoming Minister for Finance? Who is the incoming, foreign minister, for example? So these are some of the key portfolios that they look out for, and how does it attract business investments? How is it easier for the investment landscape with the incoming government? So Asians are very practical, and therefore they look for where the money is, and also they're not so much interested in human rights, I'll be honest with you. Not so much interested in freedom of expression. And so it's always about, where is the money? That's where we're going.
So, Annalie, I was just thinking, one of the things that you notice covering politics in the region, particularly in isolated countries like Burma, is that they're obsessed with what the foreign media says. They have this kind of idea that everything that appears in the foreign media is read by the entire world and comes back. I'm not saying it's as bad as that in Thailand, but there is an element of, what are they thinking about us, outside. But on the other side, as journalists, we're trying to fight for space to get our stories to publications. So you're working for a Dutch newspaper, the biggest in Holland. You're covering elections on the other side of the world. How is your copy treated? How much space are you actually given, and what's the kind of feedback that you get from your readership?
Well, to comment on your first remarks about the people here, the way they view foreign media. So I work for Dutch and Belgian media, but they often, the first thing they ask, oh, are you CNN? So I say yes, because it helps a lot to open doors.
So
no, I'm kidding.
You lie.
No. Kidding.
CNN's fault for not having anyone here.
Channel them to CNA.
CNN. So let me first tell you, I forgot to mention that I cover Southeast Asia. A lot of my reporting is within an EU context. So the Netherlands, Belgium is very interested in business in Thailand. The Netherlands has a very good relationship with Thailand. We have a monarchy. Relationships go back over 400 years. But they're also interested in human rights angle. And so actually I have to fight sometimes to sell my stories about Thai politics, but in general there's quite a lot of interest, because of multinational companies doing business here from the Netherlands, tourists coming here. One of the biggest challenges as for politics, for all of us, for example, right now, people in my audience wants me to explain how come that the two parties, pro-democracy, so-called pro-democracy, or parties that are not military parties, move forward. Puatai won the majority of votes, but Move Forward came first, but it's ending up in the opposition. So how do you? It's quite a challenge to explain to people without mentioning all the twists and turns, because otherwise I won't get my story in the newspaper, how politics work here, that it's so, Thai politics is so transactional, there's a lot of backroom deals. Well, like I said, I covered 5 elections, so I've seen, quite a bit of the role of the establishment, unelected authorities who are quite inventive in using legal and constitutional instruments to at their disposal to get the outcomes they want. It's really hard to get these things confirmed, so it's quite difficult. So sometimes my editors are asking me, so what's happening, is it confirmed or not? I mean, it's still difficult to explain, even to editors, how things work and get your stories in the newspaper.
Panu, if you go back to 2019 election, 4 years ago, which was the biggest party?
2019, Pheu Thai was the biggest party.
And what happened to Pheu Thai?
They were
Ended up
in
the
opposition.
Exactly. So, in fact, what we have just seen isn't.
Is it new?
It's not new.
There is a difference there, which is that, in 2019, Pheu Thai won the most number of seats. They didn't actually win. Parliamentary did better in votes. They've got the public vote. But more to the point, there's a point I had to put in my coverage. I mean, it is difficult. On the day that this government was formed, we're taxing Shinawatra coming back the same day. We've just been talking about, how did you explain this? Who Thaksin Shinawatra is? A former prime minister, self-exiled, facing charges. I mean, there's him, you've got Srettha Thavisin, you have Move Forward. It was a very challenging day dealing with both these developments. But the big difference was, and I think it was important that we highlighted this, that in 2019, although the electoral system was designed specifically to weaken Pheu Thai, and they got fewer seats than they would have done, and if they hadn't got caught out with that device with a second party that got pushed out, but choosing the king's sister as their prime minister or candidate, you've probably all forgotten that. But the main point was that Pheu Thai could not form a majority in the lower house. I remember sitting there, they pulled together then Future Forward, Move Forward's predecessor, and they had very close. They were a few seats short. That's a majority of the lower house. They couldn't get it, and in the end, Palampracharat, Prayut's party, did get a clear majority in the lower house, which means that the Senate, which is the most controversial part of the military drafted constitution, the landmine that has been left in Thailand's political landscape, was not weaponized. This time it had to be weaponized because Move Forward and Pheu Thai together had an absolutely clear majority of the lower house. That's why I think so much of the Western media went with the narrative that the popular will has been subverted by an undemocratic constitution. And I know Nene and the Royalists say, I mean, they've got a point. In any political system in Europe where you have a proportional system, even a party that wins the most seats won't necessarily form a government if it doesn't have a majority. But Pheu Thai and Move Forward together with their alliance had an absolute clear majority. And it was the unelected Senate who sat there blocking them and making it clear that Move Forward couldn't form a government, which is why this election was really quite different.
Yeah, but still, going back to the point, it did have the most seats in 2019, so that much of it is parallel. It
had the largest share. It didn't have a majority.
No, I didn't say that. It had the largest number of seats. Right, okay, we got that clear. So Panu, going from there, why do you think the uproar this time was so much more pronounced? What was it that sparked in the international media and caught the imagination of people overseas in a way that did not happen in 2019?
I think it all comes down to, I guess, how the campaign was run and how the campaign unfolded. I think, it's been a while since the May election, but leading up to that election, there were clear framing. First framing, public framing in the Thai public about not joining with the uncle's party. It's a very important piece of narrative because if there was not any of these kind of framing, Pheu Thai joining with these parties that we have seen how it unfolded right now is actually not that unnatural. Many ex-Pheu Thai people in Palampracharat, they have worked before in Phum Chai Thai. It is basically the campaign that set the tone for the Thai public and ultimately for us, foreign media as well. So the first one was, of course, this narrative of democracy versus the dictatorship, right? Democracy versus the legacy of the coup, the uncles. That was reluctantly accepted if you kind of can wind back to the news coverage and the development and the way that people give speeches and stuff before the election. Pheu Thai kind of reluctantly accepted that, because for a long time, even during the campaign leading up to the votes, there was already talks, very open talks about the potential of Pheu Thai joining Palang Pracharat already, even before all this. We tend to forget because, this is what happened with Thai election like this. It's because it drags on so long, people tend to forget at times. But so I think the framing is important. And a lot of it has to do with social media, with new voters, with all this sort of stuff. And they have really chased down this narrative. One of the key development, if you remember, was after the election when Pitha already announced his 8-party alliance. And then they kind of over a weekend sorted out a support from Chat Pathana Kla, a party with 2 seats, run by Suwat Liptapanlop and Gorn Chetikawanit. And there was this huge uproar on social media over one day, like 24 hours. The Move Forward sort of U-turn on this initiative, even though they initiated it. It was not Pheu Thai, it was not others. They initiated because they try to get as many votes as they want. So in many ways, the public pressure this time around, despite being sort of the second election after the coup and all that sort of stuff, was much more. The pressure was asserted much more, and I think that really helped shape the narrative. And people like the royalists, like Nene and others, I mean, they are very kind of wary of this narrative, right? And right now, what we're seeing shaping out on Thai social media, and in many ways shape out on Thai sort of domestic media as well, is that the non-supporter of Move Forward is trying to isolate them. Is trying to say that they are the outlier, they are the strange ones, and they're trying to say that all these things that Move Forward supporters have been saying is not conducive to running a country and so on and so forth. And this is what we're seeing playing out right now in Thai society. And I think in many ways this election, why the pressure, your question, Dominic, was so large, is because this is really the crossroad. The crossroad between the new and the old ways of doing politics and the new way of doing politics. And Move Forward have shown that this is a new way. I've tracked it, one of my story, I tracked it, a Move Forward candidate in a Thai district, in Bangkok district, and he spent like 50,000 baht. And I know for a fact, some of the candidates in that same district spend 50 million, right? So this is really a real stark contrast. The old way of doing things and a new way of doing things. And what we're seeing right now, and I'm not taking sides, or I'm just seeing what Kun Srettha has assembled at his government and cabinet. We're really seeing sort of a patronage systems, or a variety of patronage system on speed. We're seeing this kind of recognition that Thailand is at this crossroad. The public has already moved on, but the old powers, and this is encompassing, all sides, will have one last hurrah before the new way takes hold. So that I'll stop it there, and then we can come back.
So May Wong, let's take a look at the whole Senate issue, which is the joker in the pack. I mean, yes, it was constitutionally accepted in 2017, promulgated. You could say that the Thai electorate had no choice, and that they pragmatically kicked the can down the road and said a constitution is better than no constitution, and maybe we can change things later, not realizing that this constitution is extremely difficult to play around with. So they put this, imposed the Senate as part of the decision-making process for the selection of a prime minister, which basically is how you form the government. The reason I'm asking you this question is, where else have you seen this?
Maybe Jonathan might be best to answer that.
No. I think you'd answer it much better.
Myanmar.
So
right?
quickly explain the Burmese system.
Right. Well, it's also a bunch of military, 25% of the military, right, is entrenched within parliament system, and they are not voted. They're obviously appointed, and whatever charter changes that you want to make or tweaks that you want to have in the charter, you need the support of the 25% of the military soldiers in there. And they're all in uniform. They're actually seated in parliament, but they are just appointed to be there. So, you know, they don't understand the laws. They don't care about the laws. It's just that if the commander-in-chief tells you to vote this way, you will vote this way. All right? So that's the other place that I've actually seen it actually come into play, that a lot of the rules and regulations were blocked. For example, when the NLD party led by Aung San Suu Kyi wanted to change the charter in order to make her the president of the country because of her foreign husband or her foreign late husband, they didn't allow that. And therefore they went around the system by appointing her as the state councillor or the prime minister, so to speak. And that's how she got in, and that infuriated the military to say, how is this possible? We've got this, you know, ironclad charter in place, and yet she was still able to become the state councillor. So that obviously is one, you know, example that we are seeing, or that we've seen. And honestly, I think between Thailand and Myanmar, they kind of look at each other for examples to learn from.
Inspirations.
Exactly, right? Yeah, so the commander-in-chief, Min Aung Hlaing, is looking at Thailand to see, oh, how did Prayut manage to stay so long after he staged a coup, still get elected in the 2019 election, and why can't I do that? And that's why, you know, Min Aung Hlaing, the senior general in Myanmar, is going down that route, trying to stage an election which everyone is going to, you know, completely ignore, and also to say that we will never recognize a new election, right? And he takes leave from Prayut to see how he's doing that, how he's controlling, you know, so many different chess pieces. And right now, if you look at it, I think a lot of people are questioning the power of Prawit Wongsuwan, because there's a lot of talk about the fact that the senators were split in voting for Srettha Thavisin. And everyone, you know, thought that Prawit had it in his bag. They thought that Prawit would become the next prime minister. And it was designed in a way to do that. But suddenly he seemed to have been blindsided by the fact that Prayut's bag of senators ended up voting for Srettha. That's how Srettha ended up getting enough votes. And where does that leave Prawit right now? So it's very interesting to see the whole lineup of cabinet ministers, because then you can see the allegiance of the different individuals and what portfolios they will end up getting, because there are very, very lucrative ministries out there that everyone seems to be gunning for. And so it really shows you that split between the two and where the powers are going to lie right now.
So you've got this interesting idea of who's learning from who. Burmese Constitution 2008, Thai Constitution 2017. Does that give us a little bit of a clue?
Sorry, how do you mean by that?
Well, the Constitution went through in Burma. If you remember, it was Ramra through after the hurricane in 2008. So the question is, who's learning from who?
I think it's a combination. I think they were just mutually exchanging information, right? Until today, they are still, you know, having a very close relationship and exchange of information and advice. And I think that because, you know, it's, well, Thailand has gone through several coups before, and Myanmar also had, you know, previous coups before. And I think they kind of, because they are also such close neighbors, there is a lot of similarities as well. And so they tend to just learn from each other.
Okay, so the two systems aren't identical. It's 25% block in the
Don, it's worth pointing out that when the Burmese military designed that constitution, their model was Suharto's Indonesia in the 1990s. That 25% is an exact echo, and I know from interviewing.
So that's where that idea
interviewing
comes
George San, the information minister, that's our model. And
so
I was shocked because it was in 2008, and it said the Indonesian model collapsed. They've got democracy now. He said, no, that's the one we want. That's our model.
It's 25% in Burma. We don't
As it was in Suharto's
It was
Indonesia,
before
same.
the coup. Thailand, it's 1/3. It's 250, so it's actually a bigger block here, effectively, if they wish to use it. So the question that then arises, well, anybody on the panel know of any other countries in the world that operate this particular refined form of democracy?
for testing us. Maybe we should throw it to the audience.
Anybody in the audience?
Anyone out there know somewhere?
So this is a uniquely regional institution.
I think one point that is very important here is that I've just covered the Cambodian election, which is, if you want an election that's a farce, I mean, my God, but all these countries have realized that if you go through the performative process of a democracy, however much you rig the rules, you can stand up and say, we had an election. And I think that's very important. And you saw Nene saying that, and these are the rules, and they broke this rule. This is our system. I mean, I think all these systems have learned that you can have democracy, you can have elections, but you can rig it in a way that you always get the result you want.
Okay, so the formation of the Senate, in the current Senate that we have, was fairly opaque. It's quite hard to work out how that actually happened. It comes to an end when, May next year?
Yeah.
Who chooses next year, and what might, if anything, change? Does anybody on the panel? I'm not going to ask anybody.
So the transition is so it's going to be reduced from 250 to 200.
Right.
The last time around, because of the time constraint, after 5 years of military rule, Pravit and Prayut basically just selected the names that were recommended to them from various government agencies, including sort of the judiciary, the independent agencies, various associations, and so on and so forth. This time around, similar model, as in the association, the judicial body, anti-corruption commission, all the sort of agencies will nominate, and within their own organization have sort of picks and select who should be represented to the Senate, and then that will be it. They're self-elected in that sense from their association.
What happens to the right to vote on a prime minister?
That's apparently according to the referendum in 2017, that clause, that extra clause, that power is gone by next May. It's gone, but you never know. There's various. There's still less than a year to go. There might be some legal changes that could happen. Like I think today or yesterday, one of the senators was in open parliament was saying that they because of the 250 were selected by the military, they are, I think, barred from running again as a Senate. And this guy was proposing that they should be extended. So we never know, right? These they make up the rules as they go along, and that could potentially be one of these kind of way forward. Is that they still have, despite already voting for Srettha as prime minister, they still have some role to play, and with the very complicated alliances in this government that we have right now, you can never rule out whether the Senate somehow will return in various forms. But right now, as it stands, the power to elect prime minister will be ended by May.
So it's very murky. You can't predict anything.
Murky, but like if let's say if the system remains and we're going towards May, it will be less murky in terms of determining the Senate, the future senators themselves, because you can actually go to some of these agencies and see who are the favorites and stuff like that. Unlike during the military period where it was quite murky, and then you have people emerging out of nowhere, in many respects. I mean, they have military and police and all that, but still kind of out of nowhere in many senses.
And it's worth pointing out that in the past, Thailand did have unelected senates, which were in fact quite well regarded often because they put in very experienced people from a wide swathe of areas. So the idea that it's automatically a bad thing to have an unelected Senate doesn't necessarily follow. Anyway, look, just move on to another issue. One of the things that's come out of Move Forward being shunted off into the opposition is the whole idea that they actually dodged a bullet, because they would have been compromised within a coalition government. They would have had to deal with Thai, which is clearly not a progressive party. Nobody could claim that. So in a way, they've dodged that bullet, and they have the opportunity to be an extremely effective opposition. And this may actually be something that Thailand hasn't really seen before, the whole idea of the loyal opposition holding the government to account, raising all these uncomfortable issues. They could be more dangerous to the parties in government than they would have been had they been in government themselves. Anna Lee, what do you think of that argument?
Oh my God.
Since I'm such a nice chap.
Maybe ask Panu. Yeah, I've been thinking and talking about this a lot, but it's well, actually, recently they said they don't want to take the role of the opposition leader, but they. Yeah, they could be. I mean, I think they will go in full force in their role as opposition, and I wonder, about the proposed coalition. All the different parties. Puatai is now will be in a government with conservative parties. So how? I mean, that could be quite challenging as well. It remains to be seen if the Puatai party will be able to deliver on its promises, implement policies they promised to the people, and also I think the unity within Puatai party with the new Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin coming into the party as an outsider. So the question will also be like, what role will former Prime Minister Thaksin play to keep the unity in the party? I think there's so many factors involved.
Abducting from his hospital bed.
Just across the road.
Yeah,
It's just over here, actually, if you want to wait.
put a speaker out in the balcony, he could hear us.
These are just a few thoughts. If you ask me, what do you expect from Move Forward's role as opposition? I think, they will go in full force, and there'll be quite a strong opposition that this unwieldy coalition will have to deal with.
Right. So Panu was talking about this transition from old and new, that we are clearly at a crossing point. And of course the old solution to intransigence, not dissolution, but have a coup. You can't change the constitution, so have a coup. Now, I remember in the late 80s, all the really high-powered academics and top journalists would tell you that Thailand was beyond coups. They would never happen again. And we had 2 failed coups in the 80s. After that, we had 3 successful coups. So this complete intellectual argument was a total nonsense. And various other things happening. Does anybody here think that we have actually got to that stage where the military has realised that this is just not the way to run countries?
I think so. I mean, does anyone remember?
But you're biased.
Well, I'm just saying that after the last coup, I've seen 2 coups. I don't have the incredible track record that Dominic has. I don't think Dominic can even keep count of the number of coups he's covered.
I can't remember how many elections I've seen.
Well, that's even, and how many constitutions. After the 2006 coup, we were all summoned to the Foreign Ministry, and a very nice gentleman called Crit, who you remember became the King's principal private secretary. But anyway, he was very Western educated, and he said, "Look, stop making a fuss. I know it's a coup, but it's not going to last long. It'll be fine." When the 2014 coup happened, and of course it was after a long period of unrest. And we've been kind of slightly caught off guard, because even though they declared martial law before, General Prayut, who was then the army commander, had actually come out about 9 days before the coup, 9 or 10 days before the coup, after a meeting with the National Security Council, where he'd been in with the then Crown Prince, the current king, with all of the commanders of the other military, and said categorically there'll be no coup. And everyone thought, well, he's coming out of speaking with the heir to the throne, he's saying it publicly, maybe he means it. So when it finally happened, I think we were all, it was very clever. They had everyone locked in a room already. It was the perfect coup, very easy. We were summoned to a press conference by General Chachilam, I think his name was, one of the coup leaders. He was the guy put out to speak to the media. And he said to us, you have to understand, this coup is not going to be like previous coups. With the last coup we had, we didn't do it properly. We didn't fix Thaksin. He didn't say that, but that's kind of what he meant. We didn't fix the system whereby, because obviously Yingluck came back in, in 2011. And he said, this is going to be different. This is going to be, he made it clear it's going to be a tougher coup. What he actually said is, having a coup is really dangerous. It's treachery. It's treason. When he was asked, I think, by the Reuters correspondent, Amy, at the time, how long have you been planning this coup? He said, we didn't plan it. You can't plan a coup, because to plan a coup is to commit treason. They carry out the coup, and the moment the coup happens, they suspend the constitution so they can't be held to account. He actually said we would have faced the death penalty. So he said, this time when we've done it, we're going to make sure that we never, ever have to have a coup again. That was their mindset. Now, they were in power as a military government for 5 years, and then as a sort of military-backed government for 4 years, and the Thai public are not impressed. And their economic record isn't great, and all the powers that Prayut had under Article 44 didn't generate much transformation of Thailand. I think they know that no one's going to buy a coup again. What would their arguments be this time? It didn't work.
If I may.
Sure.
I actually agree with your points, Jonathan, and I remember that press conference as well, but I think as a Thai, I guess you can never say never. It's very depressing. But I think in many ways what we're seeing is what Jonathan was saying. They're experimenting with a way to hold on to power and somehow being, to have a sort of a legitimacy, right? Their whole play. They're a very powerful institution, and there are very many powerful generals, and they have interests in all various. You go look at Thai companies, you look at their board of directors. Thai military is a very powerful institutions, and Thai generals are very much at the top, in many ways, maybe not right at the top, but, quite at a premier position where they would sort of enjoy these kind of power. The whole play is about legitimacy and how to legitimately run Thailand, gain benefit from it, and somehow influence things when they're unhappy with what arises. And they tried the coups in 2006, they tried the coup in 2014, they have the kind of what we've had in the last 4 years, and now we have this new experiment. They're aligning themselves with Thaksin, the ultimate enemy that they've been fighting against for 20 years. And, I don't know if there's a spoiler alert or anything, but it doesn't really spell stability, doesn't really spell that they can kind of hold it together. This is, we'll have to see, I guess, but this is what they have been doing. So I think it's important when you cover, as a reporter covering this and telling it to outside audience, it's very important to contextualize, to show the history of this. And this is what the trajectory that we're seeing. And right now, this new cabinet, this new government, it's just part of this series of attempts to legitimize, military influence and legitimize establishment rule that comes with, private businesses as well as the palace and all this sort of thing. Can they make it work? Well, let's see. The new and the old that I mentioned, it might not be immediately, 4 years, 8 years from now, but let's see. This is kind of their last ditch effort, because they have to ally themselves with the enemy that they've been fighting against for 20 years. So let's see how that unfolds.
If I may just add as well, I think it's a very interesting point to take note of in the coming days when they actually announce the individuals for the minister's position. The defense ministry is, rumored to be held by a non-military person from Pheu Thai party, and that also is a reflection in terms of then does he really have control, or who is the ultimate controller over what is going to happen next?
Just to add to that, we've been, focusing on the cabinet position, defense, whether it's General, what's his name, not important, Nakwanit or now Sutin Klangsang, right, between military or civilian. But right while the press call was focusing on it, Prayut already signed off the appointment of, the future commander of the Army, Navy, Air Force. You can see it's business as usual. You can see that the progression, and for those of you who've covered, observed Thailand for a long time, you know what I mean. For those of you who don't, that's basically how, this is very important, these appointments, these promotion of officers and whatnot between sort of the April period and also this October period. And we've seen this, and in many ways it help explain the delay that we've seen since the May election.
You think that was a factor? Because, the signatures for the promotions, which happen every year, are at this time of year, late August, early September.
I mean, as a journalist, I would say that that's part of the factors. I mean, the conversation that the noises that comes from Government House by the interim government over this period has been about, a lot of the comments were about the appointment. And it was not just, by the way, it was not just the military appointment. There was also permanent secretary, 2 ministries in particular, energy and finance. So very important positions. You have these 2 ministries, and you have the 4 armed forces and the police. The police, Prayut has kind of gracefully delayed, but the military went ahead. And I'm not even sure what's going on with the civilian ones.
Okay, I don't want to get too wrapped up in coups because they're not related to what's going on, but whenever you have a coup, the reason is to protect the monarchy. And of course, in this election, the whole discussion has revolved around Article 112, which was something that Move Forward campaigned on very vigorously, initially. And of course, we all realise that you have your manifesto, you get your votes, and then you decide what you can do with your manifesto. And the first thing that they should have seen was that they would never get the 112 amendments through. Impossible. Couldn't be done. So why was this such a huge distraction? Why was so much made of this one issue when in fact it couldn't play out in political reality?
There were just two simple factors there. One is, you have to remember that Move Forward has MPs who are facing 112 charges. You know, it matters to them and their base. They couldn't just abandon it. Okay. And also, because they're a party of purity, they're not going to be pragmatic. The second thing is pretty obvious when we saw the debates in the Senate. It wasn't just about 112. 112 was what they picked on, but Move Forward had many more agendas, particularly reform of the military. Peter Lindgren-Unrat, in his interview with us, said to us, we know what all these military business interests, they're totally opaque. We need that to be transparent. We need to be taken away from the military and put under the control of the Ministry of Finance. There's a lot of other reasons why Move Forward was totally unacceptable, and in the debate it was clear it wasn't just about 112. And in conversations with a senator, he said, look, I said, why are you guys so hung up on 112? A, it's a law. The palace has nothing to do with it. It's passed by Parliament. It's been amended before. Surely, everyone knows the punishments are horribly savage. Just amending the punishments isn't such a big deal. And secondly, Move Forward don't even have the votes to get it amended anyway. And he said, you don't understand. He said, even to have it put forward in Parliament, even if we know that it's not going to be passed, the votes aren't there, that is opening the door a crack. And this is a door that cannot be opened at all. That was their view.
Annalie, you want to...
Oh, no, I wanted to say something similar, and also decentralization, which is, it's quite radical changes, would be quite radical changes for Thailand. So I can understand that the establishment sees Move Forward as the biggest threat at the moment.
Yeah. And just quickly, just add on the fact that since 2020 protests and so on, we've seen sort of hyper usage of 112. I think that the latest is at least more than 100, and the numbers keep climbing. If you're interested, you should follow Thai Lawyers for Human Rights webpage. They actually have updated number daily. And there's cases, active cases, every day. The lawyers, they're amazing, pro bono. They spend, all these times representing these cases. Some of these cases are ranging from, really kind of challenging offenses from protesters to subtle, messages on social media. So it really is a big issue in Thailand because, Move Forward, they look at their base and all this. It's one thing. But this genie is out of the bottle, and every policeman in the country, every prosecutor are reluctant not to follow through when there are charges against. This is very important because if they don't follow through, they could be charged with negligence, right? So that's why we're seeing this hyper usage, and this is a real issue. I think Move Forward some of them try to highlight this before the election, but I think the issue sort of take a life of its own, and sort of, you know, the opponents have kind of painted as a sort of this kind of sedition thing, but it's not. It's about this misuse of law. I mean, I know there's other activists that want to go further than what move forward. You know, they want to demolish the law entirely, but you know, that was the whole tone. So it's just the way that they frame it, I guess. And
this ties in with the whole view of Thai politics as open warfare. Everybody is at each other the whole time. They never back off. You know, if you wanted to cool the situation, obviously you just dismiss all the 112 cases and the whole problem disappears out the window, which is basically what Prayut did from 2018 until the demonstrations. Lèse-majesté wasn't used.
That was a decision from the palace.
And it was a recognition that if you weaponize the monarchy, you have all sorts of problems that come down.
The 2020 protests panicked them, and they brought it back. But you're right, there were no prosecutions for about 2.5 years.
Yeah. But what does this government have to deliver, in your view, to assuage a disgruntled electorate?
Paraphrase Clinton, it's the economy.
That's it. Stupid, yeah.
If they get the economy right, people will forgive them a lot.
10,000 baht, digital wallet. Right? Everyone's waiting for
that?
that. Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter whether or not they can afford it, they have to dig it up from the ground, right? In order to distribute that money, because everyone is just banking on that right now. And it's money, 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 right? It's because everyone, I mean, look at it right now. How many protests are out there on the streets right now? 0. And every time you even call for a gathering, it's pittance, right? The crowd is just so small, unlike in the days of, 2020
protests
or 2021.
Yet. Yeah.
Sorry?
The protests are not coming back yet.
Yeah, exactly, right? So they've kind of fizzled out. And right now it's really after the COVID situation, everyone is just back on track in terms of trying to get their jobs, trying to keep their jobs, trying to make money, trying to make sure that they are able to pay their rent. And so the 10,000 digital wallet, initiative is something that the Pheu Thai is really interested to push it out very quickly, right? And obviously other, issues such as trying to roll out that 20 baht BTS, fee that they have promised, and also creation of jobs. That's, some of the main things. And like Pheu Thai, it's a populist party, and they've always been, and they will always be. So once they get the economy right, that's where some people may forgive them for what they've done in terms of kicking Move Forward out. So that would be one thing that they would have to show later on, and also to keep reminding the people about that. Thaksin was great at that, and now that he's back, well, what do you expect?
Right, well, we have a microphone there, and I'm sure there are lots of people wanting to ask questions. We're flashing up these pieces of information which have been supplied by Nick Bernhard of the FCCT's board. He's the treasurer, and he's keen to see the club play a better role in educating people, which of course fills the rest of us with absolute terror.
You've all got to take notes. We'll be testing on it later.
Look who's here. It's Nick Bernhard.
Yeah, so thank you all very much for coming and speaking. It's so wonderful to hear such expert analysis on what's going on. I really just want to follow up with May on what you were just saying, because this was my takeaway. I felt like we were on the brink of massive protests with PETA not being able to get elected, and then Pheu Thai made some backdoor deals, and all of a sudden everything goes quiet. So my question is, okay, you say to make everyone forgive them, if that's the word we want to use, then all they have to do is improve the economy. Is not doing that enough to bring people back on the streets and get that upset where they're going to start, getting the pitchforks back out? Or what will we see in the next year, do you think, that may change people's minds and frustrate them again about this election and the past 9 years? Thank you.
I think it's not easy to get people out again at this stage, because there is no one enemy that they're gunning for, right? Pheu Thai, yes, Pheu Thai took over, but they felt it wasn't that bad. There are a lot of supporters. So the red shirts, if you notice right now, they're keeping very, very quiet. In the past, they used to come out and join forces together with Move Forward's supporters. And the one thing that they were constantly chanting was, Prayut Ock Bai, get out Prayut, get out Prayut. So there was one single enemy that they were gunning for. It was easy, right? But now, what do you want? You want Pheu Thai to get out? No, that's not the sentiment that people are seeing right now and are feeling right now. So it might be a little bit difficult. And obviously you have a lot of the protest leaders who are, are very, very quiet right now. They've gone on to do their own things. They've not spoken out in public. They've not even posted on social media, right? One of them went into monkhood, for a temporary period of time. The others are just keeping very quiet right now. So there is no real momentum. There is no real enemy that they are looking, at right now. The other potential, flashpoint could be the dissolution of Move Forward Party, right? And how they are going to handle Peter Limjaroenrat going forward, because he does have outstanding cases which the Constitutional Court is still deliberating.
I mean, if I may interject, like covering Thailand, and sort of being born here and all that in the last, 20, 30 years, you really need sort of a major event to kind of bring back the momentum to the street, right? So you cannot completely rule it out, but right now things look like it will kind of stay like this for a while. But we've seen it. It can happen very suddenly. Sometime, for example, during the red shirt period, it could take a build up for almost, for months, maybe even half a year or a year. For the yellow shirt in the past, we've seen they need, a year or 6-7 months in various stages, right? But all you need is a catalyst and someone that would just willingly go and sort of trying to start this sort of thing. I think we have to kind of get over the fact that the student leaders, the youth leaders of 2020, I don't think they'll be the one leading the next protest. It will be someone else, right? I mean, that's the thing. We have to look beyond. And what we're seeing right now, we see simmering tension. We're seeing some sort of, I guess, unaccounted or sort of independent yellow shirt groups starting to make noises about Thaksin. Very small, very slow, but they're there, and I think there's a fair few of them. And you're seeing some of these disgruntled youth people as well who are not, part of the leadership, but also kind of still, quite disgruntled and all this. So there are simmering elements there. What they needed is a catalyst, right? A leader, a bunch of leaders, and a cause. Right now, we haven't seen anything, and as May said, maybe the next catalyst will be the dissolution of the party. And usually in the past, even with Future Forward and Move Forward being what it is, big protests kind of comes into play when a political party or political parties sort of support it as well. So, I mean, we'll have to see. But right now, if you talk to Move Forward, they're looking forward to be in the opposition. They're looking forward to run their legislative agenda. They're not focusing on sort of street politics.
Imtiaz.
Yeah, thanks. Imtiaz Maqbool from Travel Impact Newswire. I'd just like to go back to the video that started, that we began the panel today with, and the complaints against the press, and also your reference to Jonathan as the punching bag, and May and Panu referring to the military on both Burma and here as sources of inspiration. Within the broader context, and particularly the issue of 112 coming up, what do you think is going to be the pressure on the press, the media in general, as we go forward over the next 4 years? Are we looking at more pressures, more crackdowns, more subtle or indirect squeezing of freedom of expression? And the way you cover it, I mean, certainly the writing is on the wall if that video is taken to heart. And now they've got the government in place. Certainly there's going to be a lot of controversies about the way 112 is covered going forward. And all of which, if it looks at it, it looks as if certainly there's bound to be, as Panu's word, trajectory, to find some ways to squeeze the press as much as possible and minimize the damage, particularly at a global level. So I'd just like to know what your thoughts are on the way the government is going to treat the media.
One thing I'd say is that just to put it in perspective, we're pretty free to report in Thailand.
Yes.
We're given a lot of freedom here. And, 112 is always an issue, but we can mostly get around it. We do try always to let our audiences know that on the issue of the monarchy, we are constrained. But beyond that, the only thing we have to really worry about is criminal defamation, which is a serious problem in many countries, but absolutely acute in Thailand. It means you can't say anything specific about anyone. For example, there's going to be one minister in the new cabinet who has a rather famous episode in Australia with flour, I think it was. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about. There's all this talk about Peter and his supposed media shares. There's a minister in there who did 4 years in an Australian jail for smuggling heroin. Now, if you go and report that, you will face an immediate criminal defamation charge, even though what you're saying is true. Those problems have always been there. They will be there. I think what will be interesting is to see how well Srettha himself, who's known to have a temper, handles the incredible scrutiny of what is going to be an incredibly difficult job for him. All of us have put in our bids for interviews with him. It'll be interesting to see how those encounters go. It's never easy, for a man who's a businessman. He's not used to politics and the rough and tumble of it to deal with. And do people remember when Prayut first became Prime Minister, and how agitated and frustrated he got at the way the media just threw questions at him? This is a man who's used to having every order people jump to attention and obey instantly. And suddenly all these journalists were yelling at him. So I think it's going to be an interesting ride.
Well, he shouldn't have volunteered for the job, shouldn't he?
Very reluctantly, I understand. Yeah.
Sorry, anybody else?
I completely agree. We are very free in Thailand, and I think more or less quite kind of respected and protected in many ways. But the real danger is criminal defamation, as Jonathan said. And already I'm sort of reviewing and going through what, future stories that I'm kind of working on, and there's already so many risks of defamation. This government will have a lot to do with private sectors players, with companies, with prominent companies. And we have to be very careful to find evidence to report. Otherwise, criminal defamation is a very, very, and Jonathan would know this, is a very kind of tough ordeal, right? Even if we're right, we're going to still be dragged to court for months, for years, yeah. Right? So I think that's one thing that I'm concerned, because this government there'll be a lot of deals. There'll be a lot of interesting players from the private sector involved. We're kind of already seeing shadows of it. But to report it, that's a tough one.
And
is it freer than Singapore? That's a trick question.
That was very underhand.
Sorry.
And also, one other issue that people tend to forget, in the suite of defamation laws, you have contempt of court, which applies to all the courts except the Constitutional Court. You can criticise the Constitutional Court. So if you write articles pointing out that there may be some problems with the legal system, the judiciary, you actually open yourself up to being prosecuted. And on lèse-majesté, it's not negligence. They get charged with lèse-majesté themselves for not having. It's quite subtle, actually, isn't it? Okay. Question. Can you introduce yourself?
It's really hard. Hello. This question is a little bit personal regarding of where I am from. I'm from actually one of the 3 provinces in southern part of Thailand. And I remember one of you mentioned to Mr. Thaksin when he was having his power as a prime minister. One thing that I have noticing so far is that anytime when the elected party was chosen at the as a party of Thailand, the amounts of the existing case, especially the ongoing conflict in southern part of Thailand, tend to be more and more. But anytime when the coup take over the parliament or they become a prime minister, the amounts of the cases in southern part of Thailand, I mean the 3 provinces in Thailand, tend to be a little going down. So this time, the elected party has just chosen as the prime minister, sorry, I forgot his name. And recently, 2 days ago, there is also the car bomb in southern part of Thailand. For your opinion, especially for international point of views, I would want to hear your opinion towards it. Is there any relatable or anything related to the government and the ongoing situation that has happened in southern part of Thailand? Because a lot of people address this situation, it is between their religions belief, which I am a local and I'm a part of Muslim, half Muslim and half Buddhism, and I have seen laced conflict towards it, but it's probably more of the international the just national interest that I've seen so far.
Have you been down there to the Deep South recently? You've been down Annalee?
Annalee?
Have you been down to the Deep South?
Sorry to ask this question, but I just
wonder.
Sorry, who are you? Just
pardon?
You didn't identify yourself.
Oh, I'm a Thai. I am originally from Yala. I was born there, been and raised there, but now I'm currently working in.
I wonder whether you want to talk about the difficulty of reporting the Deep South and making it, because I think that's a real challenge to make it relevant as a story.
To sell it, to pitch it to editors.
I have been to the Deep South, to the reds, including the red zones, but it's quite a while ago. I haven't been there for a while. As I said, it's hard to pitch these stories. I follow it, and I'm sorry. What was your question exactly?
Okay, my question is my question actually regarding on the ongoing conflict that has happened in southern part of Thailand. Because any time when the chosen government was chosen, the amounts of the cases among the, kind of car bomb or shotgun on the street are rising. But when the coup is actually being a prime minister, such as current government, the amounts of the cases is a little bit going down.
I mean,
is it anything that related to that?
I presume you probably know something about the dynamics down there.
Probably. Just because I did the international relations and also
it's a very, very complicated conflict. We all know that things happen in the Deep South often related to dynamics inside the BRM, which is the insurgency movement there. They can be related to military interests. I mean, I would say, did anybody even mention the Deep South during the election?
There's many candidates that talks about it, like the Fair Party and the Prashachat, right? The One No and all his cohorts. I mean, my 2 cents, I did cover the Deep South a lot, and then I do cover the peace talks and all that sort of stuff, is that the apparatus that they built down there by the military is now sort of incredibly slicked, that they kept, they kept things under control over the past 9 years. Very much a different picture from the mid-2000s, after Tak Bai, after that whole incident with Crusade, sort of 2008, 2009, when it's kind of crescendoed, and then since 2014 coup has kind of been going down. And meanwhile, I think both the BRN, as well as some other actors, Pulo and others, and the military has been sort of sidetracked by the peace process, by sort of kind of cutting the interests, trying to make a deal and all this sort of stuff that's been ongoing. And the deal is very complicated too. It involves many actors, not just the military and the BRN, there's also other actors, right? And I think your question referred to a trend. I think a lot of it said in Thai, where when there's the non-military government, the level of violence goes up a bit, and when there's military government, it's a bit more under control. I think we have to look beyond that and with this government, because it's kind of a hybrid. I think that the big question for the Deep South is whether the Srettha government will dismantle the military, military-led structure, whether it's CBAC, the Saobator, right, and whether it's the Fourth Army control of security and the continued usage of emergency decree. I mean, these 3 things, whether this government will dismantle that, because a lot of people that were voted in the Deep South, whether it's even the Prashachat or Fair Party or this, they make a big case about ending emergency decree now and slowly dismantling sort of this special administration model, right, in the Deep South. The problem with that is that there's huge budget, And there's so much interest, and a lot of people talk about this, and even I think Kun Thanathorn himself was very interested in taking some role, if Pitha was going to be leading the government. So I think that's a big question with the hybridity of this government. I don't know. I can't see a big change in that particular issue. And as Jonathan and Annalie was saying, I mean, as reporters, we find it very difficult. International reporters to kind of
nothing changes, does it? Nothing that people would understand outside Thailand.
And in many ways, that kind of attitude is adopted by sort of the government here in Bangkok as well. In many ways, I mean, they talk about it, they go down, they do something, but I would say in the last 9 years, not much has changed. You have money going into CBAC, you have money going into Saobato, I forgot the English name, and we have money going into the 4th Army, and you see them running. I mean, I was there last year, you see them everywhere, but now they try to make it more subtle, they have more defense volunteers and policemen and all this, but it's the same kind of thing. It hasn't changed that much. But what changes is I think the BRN and the others are kind of slowing, right, in many ways, slowing.
Yeah,
and of course,
thank you very much.
The Deep South kicked off again in 2001 on the first Thaksin government, Thai Rat Thai. And one of the things they've been doing was tinkering with the security arrangements. The military had it, basically it had been at peace for 2 decades. And suddenly nobody could explain what changed, but that tinkering was going on. So I would imagine Per Thai would remember that that's an area to move with caution.
Yeah, that's what they call those people, the 500 baht theft, that what he addressed when he was in power. Mr. Thaksin Shinawat.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Move on. One more, 2 more questions, do I see? We'll take 2 more and then we'll close.
Peter Trainer, I'm a club member. I just want to thank the panel for the job they're doing as journalists. As a member of the general public, there's so much information and so much news that I'm grateful that there's some kind of filter, that there's some fact checking, that there are established broadcasters who can produce news that I can trust. So I'm grateful for the job of the journalists are doing. As you've said, Thai politics are very complicated, and it's difficult to get that message across to people in general who don't know much about it. But is anybody listening? My question to the panel is, are enough people there to listen to what you have to say? I'm interested, but I'm in the minority. I'm old-fashioned. I don't use social media. I don't get my news from YouTube and WhatsApp and Line. I get it from the trusted organizations, but we had a meeting here a couple of years ago about the press, and there was a bunch of Thai students who were here in a group. There's about 20 of them, and none of them read the newspapers, and none of them watched the TV. They said that they all got their news from Facebook and Instagram. So the question is...
You're telling us we should all resign and give up, do something else.
But the question is...
Can I just say one thing? The story I wrote on Thaksin's return last week got more than 1 million views in less than 24 hours. Now, that's a good impression. It doesn't compete with what a great YouTuber gets, but there are some people listening.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing. I'm saying I support what you do. I'm just concerned that there's so many podcasters and short videos on TikTok that you're competing against. There I just hope that the message does get across. And do you feel it is getting across?
Foreign news is a niche interest. It always has been. Our editors these days tie themselves up in knots, thinking, we've got to get the 18 to 30-year-olds, forgetting that 18 to 30-year-olds were never interested in news. They never read newspapers. They didn't watch the news. It's a different world. People aren't prisoners of a linear television station where if they want to watch their favorite program, they've got to sit through the evening news. People can pick and choose. It's a much tougher environment. But you're probably getting good audience figures, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't have any issues in trying to sell the story, unlike Annalie or Jonathan over here. It's because it's Asia. We are in Asia, and everyone in Asia is looking at each other in terms of the neighboring countries, what they're doing, because it's interlinked. right? Yeah, everything from politics to social to economics, right? You're kind of interdependent on each other. So it's not a difficult sell. In fact, sometimes we're struggling because there's so many stories to tell, and the headquarters in Singapore is asking us, can you do this, do this, do this? And we're like, but we only have a pair of hands, right?
I wish I had your problem.
It's a good problem, right? Yeah, so for us, it's not hard at all. And, you know, there are a lot of clicks, but you're right. You know, social media, the younger generation, definitely, right? They want to see TikTok videos in 60 seconds. Tell me the news in 60 seconds, and just the key points. So for us, it's a little bit easier as well in terms of broadcasters, because we just get to the point. Unlike for newspapers or longer pieces of articles where you have to really, right, read it and understand it. And
have you been on TikTok yet? Have you done a TikTok?
Why you got to put me on a spot like that?
Well, anyway, because I've had to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm bloody well too old for this stuff, but the BBC's making me do TikTok videos.
A dancing TikTok video.
I said, what do you want? He says, hold your camera, do what you normally do, but do it double the speed and sound twice as cheerful. And then they cut it up anyway and made it even faster.
Have some background music.
Still not that cheerful.
No,
That's really sad.
It's the fact that you are providing fact-checked, solid information, and stories that come on TikTok and Instagram don't have to be fact-checked. They don't have to be true. They just have to sound good and be sensational, and that's the audience doesn't know the difference.
Preaching to the choir.
Oh, yeah, I think
it's true, but I think at the end of the day, right, if there is a big event, Thaksin coming back, if there's a massive shift in certain events, they will only turn to the credible media and the established media organizations to understand and to watch and to read the news. They're not going to look at TikTok and see what's going on. They may, but at the end of the day, if they wanted to get a more comprehensive view on that, then they would actually look at the very credible and established media organizations for that.
I'm glad I'm not in the minority.
My jurisdiction is not as wide as some of the colleagues here. I only cover mainland Southeast Asia. But I have to say, I was told by my Reuters team, and I think, I don't know if you guys agree, but Thailand's often punch above its weight in terms of interest, randomly somehow.
People come on holiday here.
Yeah, people come on holiday, people click on Thai-related stories, more than other countries in this part of the world, for us at Reuters. And you know, need I remind you, the cave boy, remember that craziness? Right? And you know, Thailand story, it's suddenly become, it punch above its weights all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also, it's a presumption that the people who watch TikTok today, that their grandparents read newspapers seriously before. There are people who read newspapers, who have always taken an interest, they're a minority, and they still exist. And if you watch, we can see audience engagement on any online publication, same as BBC website. You know exactly how many people have read an article, where they come from, how long they read it for, and I can tell you that people read Thai political stories with great interest. They definitely go a little bit above the average, if not very much above the average on occasions. Question?
Hello, I'm Ben from British Embassy. I got a short question about the explanation of forming the current coalition government, because recently there have been an argument from Pheu Thai Party supporters and some academics that they trying to justify and trying to explain that forming the coalition government with the former military junta political parties is normal and is actually a transition process to democracy. So my question is, what do you think about this argument from your international media point of view? Is this happening is normal, and this is a transition to, is this actually a transition to democracy, or is just a political...
Annalie, you come from a country where that's normal.
Or is just a political deal to take Thaksin, you know what, back home?
But I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? Yes. The forming coalition is normal.
I think if I may just jump in here really quickly, it's Thailand. Right? So I think a lot of people do understand, right, that this is something, when you say normal, how do you explain normal? What is normal to you? It may not be normal to me, right? Yeah. But this is something that was expected. So it was not entirely shocking. yeah, to not just the population here in Thailand. They don't like it, parts of it, but at the end of the day, it was not something that it was, completely out of this world. They've seen it in multiple occasions, right? And sorry, please go.
I mean, do you remember you'll remember, Dominic, when Abhisit Wejjijiwa became Prime Minister in the end of 2008, he argued, because we did interviews with him ferociously, he's very British educated, very Western, he's very articulate. He said, this is totally normal, it's just a reshuffling of the coalition. And I said, yeah, but what's not normal is having the army commander going around and arranging the whole thing and sort of strong-arming people. That's the difference here. The coalition, the bargaining, a lot of the public here and in other countries like say, oh, it's disgusting, all these politicians bargaining and handing out positions. That is normal, and it's the only way we know how to do politics. There's always deals. What isn't normal is to have a 250-seat unelected Senate, which owes its allegiance to an unelected military junta, having the casting vote. That was what was different, and that is not normal bargaining for coalitions.
And do you think this situation is leading to the transition to democracy or not?
I don't like the word democracy. I mean, it's got so many different meanings. Transition to what? I mean, doesn't mean much, I don't think.
Well, I think, what we've seen with Move Forward, I think the deal between the pro-military parties and Pheu Thai happened because of Move Forward, and Move Forward have moved everything ahead for Thailand. And I think if they play the long game, I think Move Forward will gain. And I mean, yeah, that's, I think, what will happen. So but let's see.
Well, that's pretty depressing. So we've got to wait for all the oldies to die off.
I contest this. When people talk about transition to democracy, I think one of the big problems we've had about the narrative about where countries are going in the last 25 years is the triumphalism that came in the post-Cold War period, where so-called Western-style democracy, just the word democracy used to be put up as that's it, which is all about basically, voting in elections. There are thousands of different kinds of democracy. It's the quality of the democracy or even quasi-democracy and the levels of public involvement, the levels of public satisfaction with it that probably surely matter more, rather than saying, is Thailand heading to some destination called democracy?
Yeah, because I do wonder whether this is actually a transition to democracy, because they did argue that there is no way to transition to democracy if you don't form the coalition with the former junta party.
It was a perfect way. They could have allowed Move Forward and Pheu Thai to form a government. If it hadn't been with the Senate, they would have done it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very democratic.
Thank you.
Good. Well, on that happy note, I'll wrap things up. Thank you very much, Jonathan, Mei Wong, Panu, Anna Lee. We should do this more often. And thank you for coming.